All right, folks, let's get right to it. We had Mitt Romney, Rick Santorum duking it out in Iowa. And here's what's amazing to me. Republicans are absolutely freaking out about the prospects of Mitt Romney. And I'm going, isn't this why they have primaries? That you run to amass delegates to win? It's only one contest so far. Why are they losing their mind over the prospects of Romney or even a Santorum?
Well, particularly after a whole season of, one went up, one other went down, the other went up, the other went down in terms of the who's the not Mitt. So they knew this was going to happen, although I think that's part of the reason there's the conservative gathering over this weekend where they're all caballing in Texas. I'm sure it's to figure out, can we live with Romney if that's who we have to live with?
I mean, I don't get it, because isn't the whole point of a process to allow the people to decide and not the establishment?
But that's what the fear is. I mean, Robert's folks have been brutalized over the last year or so. Look at the primaries. The Tea Party has absolutely brutalized the Republicans in the primary and scared the bejesus out of the Washington establishment. Now, the Washington establishment is clearly saying we want Mitt Romney, but the Tea Party has yet to speak and coalesce around a candidate. And I've got to think that when the Tea Party coalesces around one of these other conservative candidates, if he has the time at this point and can raise the money in infrastructure, that candidate is going to beat Mitt Romney, because the vast majority of the conservatives don't trust Mitt Romney.
What I don't understand, the premise of your question is Republicans freaking out. I don't know what Republicans are freaking out, Roland.
Robert, you haven't watched TV for the last 3 months?
I have, and what I've seen is, I'm sure I've seen what you've seen, and that is that the American people are speaking and saying, we don't know who we like yet. Sometimes we like Herman Cain. Sometimes we like, I'm just being honest with the polls are saying. Sometimes we liked Ron Paul. Sometimes we like Michelle Bachmann. This is what the primary process is all about. It's sausage making. I'll remind you that back in 2000, Democrats were having the very same conversation with Al Gore and Bill Bradley were fighting literally for the Democratic nomination. Did you want to go with the liberal or did you want to go for the moderate? I'll remind you that back in 1980, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush were still having this conversation.
Okay, first of all, in 2000, Al Gore was the sitting vice president. It was not. It wasn't even close to the same thing with Bill Bradley.
No. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Well, if I could finish, and the reason why it was is because, and I looked at the clips, by the way, it's because a lot of Democrats and a lot of national press were saying, well, wait a minute, this is a struggle between the heart and soul of the Democratic Party in 2000. Why is Al Gore being challenged? The reason why he's being challenged is because a lot of liberals at that time didn't know exactly where he stood on the issues.
To me, there's a difference between somebody who's a sitting vice president and someone running against them, between what's happening here. There literally is a significant anti-Mitt Romney folks in the party. Chris, go ahead, Chris.
Yes, because there's a fight in the Republican Party. Do we want to be practical or do we want to be ideological? That's the problem that's going on in the Republican Party right now. So if they want to be ideological, they're going to have to go with someone like Santorum. If that happens, the pragmatists fear that he's not going to be elected. So do they really want 4 more years of Obama? That's the question.
But this is the tension that has been going on for a very long time on both sides, frankly, in terms of it is about letting the voters have their say. I mean, we did, as the Democratic Party, go through this in 2008. I loved how all the pundits tried to predict, and every time they were so surprised because they said, and I would say to them when I was at the DNC, it's because the voters are going to do what they're going to do, and you can't tell them what to do.
And that's the point I make, because, again, when I hear, the establishment make their argument, I keep saying, again, folks are freaking out on Tuesday night, saying, New Hampshire, what's going to happen next? And I say, guys, you got to win the nomination. This is why you actually run.
That's right.
One person who is also, really getting upset is Chuckie, Newt Gingrich. He is so mad at Mitt Romney. He looks like the movie character Chuckie. I mean, he is hot and upset. And I'm sitting there going, Newt, suck it up. You sound like a little wimp, complaining about negative advertising. I'm sure Jim Wright's in Texas going, yeah, now you know how that feels, huh, Newt?
But this is the new Gingrich. This is the new Gingrich that we knew and fell in love with and hated. And in the mid-1990s, he's very thin-skinned, and thus in the process, it's a war in his head, really. And it is us against them. And if you are against me, I'm going to.
Against them.
Well, okay. And
Cornell.
But really quickly, this point is, and take it to a broader point, is that Newt's got a right to be angry, but not angry necessarily at Mitt Romney. He should be angry at the process now, because this is where it becomes a problem. We now have millionaires upon millionaires can simply write million-dollar checks and influence the process and have no accountability or responsibility.
Well, the GOP is cool with that.
And Mitt was okay with that. But you know what?
Wait. But there's a super PACs jumping in this, and it's the influx of all this money. And you cannot tell me that the voters and the voice of the people win out when you have millionaires putting this kind of money in the process.
Karen.
It undermines the democratic process.
Number one, Gingrich was fine with it when it wasn't him who was the target of all that. So that's my problem with him on that. Secondly, in Iowa, you have 660,000 registered Republicans. 110,000 of them turned out. So that means the majority of registered Republicans decided to let a small group of people make their decision for them. That has nothing to do with big money going in or going out. That means you have to have your responsibility to go and vote.
Here's where big money does actually absolutely, because this is an interesting conversation. This is where big money does have an impact. Newt Gingrich was rising in the polls. Big money said we're not going to let Newt Gingrich rise in the polls, and they spent millions of dollars attacking Newt Gingrich. Those millions of dollars do absolutely influence. And guess what? Going to South Carolina, Florida, that money's going to influence the process.
If he didn't have all that baggage and wasn't trying to lie to the voters
I'm not
about who he
taking
really was,
I'm not taking for Newt Gingrich.
Look, Newt is mad because of the fact that he did not have the money to run the advertisement.
Exactly right.
That's why he was mad. To defend himself.
And what's also interesting is that he virtually has no surrogates. I mean, seriously,
Right.
you don't have people out here defending
There's one person I think your audience would probably recognize, and that's J.C. Watts, which I thought was ironic.
Yeah, but he's not saying much.
Because he's screwed over J.C. Watts.
I do want to go to this week of the Obama administration when it came to recess appointments, appointing Richard Cordray, of course, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also the National Labor Relations Board. And I must say, I'm saying, yes, it's about damn time, Mr. President. Thank you for finally realizing the other side, they're not going to play this game nice. And then you're going to have to go there and go all the way in and say, look, you guys want to play the game? Fine, let's play the game. Now, I personally think it's ridiculous when Democrats and Republicans block presidential appointees to the point where they can't get an up and down vote. But what he did this week, I'm saying, hey, good job.
Well, except for the fact that Congress is not in recess. Now, he had an opportunity to do it. There was at one point when the gavel was up, it had not gone down. It is at that point that he should have done it.
That's right.
That's right. Actually, about 30 seconds.
But to your point, constitutionally, I believe he was obviously within his right to do that. I mean, obviously, it pisses a lot of people off. However,
hold on, for the people who are watching. It is in the Constitution for the president to make recess appointments.
Correct.
Go right ahead.
So, having said that, to your point, it's almost like finally this man has a spine. Finally, he's going to stand up for what he really believes in. And thus, in the process, finally, it seems like maybe he's in campaign re-election mode. The question is that I'm hearing from a lot of my Democratic friends is why didn't he do this 5 months ago or 6 months ago?
And I will say it's because he made the mistake of treating the congressional Republicans like they were adults who could be trusted to govern. And now we realize, you know what? They actually don't care about governing, so you don't get to be treated like an adult.
I'm sorry. I mean, frankly, okay, I knew from the moment he got in, Republicans were going to block him. And I knew from the and I also knew the moment when Bush got in, the Democrats would do the exact same thing.
The fury and the acid that we now see in the process is not what you see in the past.
Please.
There's no. Well, okay, challenge me on that. But let me make this.
I was in the Senate.
They have not let him get one up or down on almost any appointment. And the language. Democrats in the Senate did not do what Republicans in the Senate are now doing.
They did.
They did.
Yes, they did.
That is not accurate. That is not absolutely did.
No, they did not. Look at all the appointments he has sitting there waiting. There's no way Bush has that. There's no way Bush had those many sitting around waiting. It's just not factual.
Robert, go ahead.
We need to be on next week, and I'll do my homework, and I'll show you all the lists. Hold on. I'll show you the list of all the people. Miguel Estrada, you go on down the list of all the folks that
I will take you on Democrats
personally,
the Republicans have been blocking versus.
Let's go back to your point.
Robert Cornell.
Hold on. Your point was you said that Republicans did not do the same exact thing the Democrats did. My point is that Democrats.
My point is that the level of hostility that Republicans are now showing the president is no way we've seen that in the past. There's no way.
Here's the deal.
My point
both of you will be back on the show next week. We'll present to our audience what the actual facts are, and then they can see it for themselves. So both of you, calm the hell down.
Okay.
All right, then.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
so let me go real quick. Will New Hampshire matter? We think Mitt Romney likely is leading big time in the polls. Is the real issue after Tuesday what's going to happen in South Carolina and Florida?
Yes, and it matters, though, that Mitt actually has a good showing, a strong showing in New Hampshire.
Chris?
New Hampshire doesn't matter. It's South Carolina and Florida.
Robert?
South Carolina since 1980 has always chosen a Republican nominee. It's South Carolina.
Cornell?
New Hampshire doesn't matter because and the Republican opponent should set up New Hampshire as high expectations that Mitt can't meet, and South Carolina and Florida matter.
Last quick round. Is John Huntsman dead after Tuesday?
Yeah, time to go home.
He's been dead. He's a Democrat.
Oh, wait a second! What?
He's a dead man walking.
Yes, he's done.
And it's amazing. He's a pretty nice guy who's reasonable, which means he cannot win the GOP nomination. All right, folks. Karen, Chris, Robert, Cornell. We'll see the two of you next week. It's going to be the WWL
baby.
on this show.